The door closed softly behind Daniel as he stepped into Café Lumiere, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Maya. She felt her pulse quicken, her heart racing. The disappointment of being stood up still lingered, but now, seeing him finally arrive, a swirl of emotions, anger, curiosity, and confusion mixed inside her. But it wasn't just his presence that caught her attention. It was the way he was looking at her, his gaze dark and intense. For a moment, it felt like he was studying her, analyzing her every move, and it unsettled her more than she would have expected. Maya forced herself to stand up, her palms slightly sweaty as she reached for her purse. "Daniel," she greeted him, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "Hey, Maya," Daniel said, his tone a little flat, and then his gaze shifted to the cafe owner, who was still seated across from her. The atmosphere shifted immediately, tension thick in the air. The cafe owner, who had been watching the exchange quietly, gave Daniel a casual nod, his expression neutral. "I'm assuming you're the one she's been waiting for," he said, his voice calm and deliberate. But there was an edge to it. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly, but he forced a smile. "That's right. I'm Daniel." His gaze flicked to Maya before he returned it to the cafe owner, his posture suddenly more rigid. Maya felt a pang of discomfort. She could sense the shift in the energy between the two men. The cafe owner remained calm, unaffected by Daniel's presence. But Maya could tell that Daniel wasn't pleased to see him there. "Well, I think I'll leave you two to catch up," the cafe owner said, standing up smoothly and giving Maya a small, reassuring smile. "Let me know if you need anything else." Maya hesitated, wanting to say something to explain that it wasn't what Daniel might think, but the cafe owner was already walking away, his long strides taking him to the counter. He didn't even glance back. Maya watched him go, and when she turned her attention back to Daniel, she saw his expression had shifted from casual to something much darker. His jaw was set tight, his brow furrowed, as if a storm was brewing inside him. "Why didn't you tell me you were meeting someone else?" Daniel asked, his voice low, almost tight with frustration. Maya was taken aback by the accusation in his tone. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm despite the growing tension. "I told you I'd be here. I didn't know you'd be so late, Daniel. You didn't show up when you said you would." I know, Daniel snapped, rubbing the back of his neck as if trying to shake off the anger. "But that's not the point. You were supposed to be here with me, not him." Maya's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Him? The cafe owner?" Daniel's gaze darkened. "Yeah, him. I saw the way he was looking at you, and you looked comfortable with him." His voice dropped as he continued, a hint of something that sounded like jealousy creeping into his words. Maya's pulse began to race again, but this time, it wasn't just the situation with Daniel. It was the realization that this was becoming more complicated than she had anticipated. She hadn't expected to feel anything for the cafe owner, but the connection between them felt undeniable. And now Daniel was accusing her of something she hadn't done. She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "I'm not interested in him like that, Daniel. He was just being polite, offering me coffee while I waited. I didn't ask for anything else." Daniel stared at her for a long moment, his expression hard to read. He opened his mouth to say something, but then seemed to think better of it. Instead, he turned on his heel and walked toward the door, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. "I don't know if I believe you," he muttered under his breath, his voice tinged with frustration. Maya stood frozen for a moment, the words echoing in her mind. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected Daniel to react this way, and yet a part of her wasn't surprised. She had known him to be possessive in their online chats, but seeing it in person felt like a completely different beast. She glanced over at the cafe counter where the cafe owner was wiping down the surface, his back to her. She wanted to talk to him, to explain that things weren't as they seemed, but it felt like the moment was slipping away, like the space between them was widening. After a moment's hesitation, Maya grabbed her purse, her fingers trembling slightly. She needed to get out of the cafe, needed some air, some space to process everything that had just happened. But just as she reached the door, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen and saw Daniel's name flash across it. Her heart skipped a beat. Was he really going to try and fix things after all of this? Before she could open the door, though, the cafe owner turned and caught her eye. He raised an eyebrow, his expression curious. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice softer than before, the earlier edge replaced with concern. Maya's throat tightened. She couldn't explain the whole mess to him, not now, not with everything still so raw. But she appreciated his kindness, the way he seemed to sense her unease without needing any further explanation. She forced a smile, trying to mask her emotions. "Yeah, just complicated." His eyes softened. "Sometimes things are, but it's important to trust what feels right, even if it's not always easy." Maya didn't know why, but something about his words struck her. Maybe it was his honesty, or maybe it was just the fact that she needed to hear it. She nodded, unable to form words. With a final glance at the door, she opened it and stepped out, the cool air hitting her face like a welcome relief. She had no idea what would happen next. Would she give Daniel another chance? Would she see the cafe owner again? And most importantly, what did her heart really want? As Maya walked out into the cool evening, her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Daniel. But just as she opened it, her attention was caught by a shadow looming near the street corner. A figure stood there, waiting, watching. It was the cafe owner. Was he following her? And why did it feel like there was something more to his presence than just concern?